Today on Locked On Phoenix Suns, a little bit of information on the Kevin Durant front. Much more to get to on Devin Booker, not so good either. And we'll close out with a new candidate to be the Suns' fourth coach in 4 years. Next.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Phoenix Suns. I'm Brendon Kleen, a staff writer at Awful Announcing and a credentialed Suns media member. Thank you for making Locked On Suns your first listen here on this game day, Tuesday. Don't forget Locked On Suns, free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. So click that follow or subscribe button, do what thousands of other Suns fans have already done. Become an everydayer and get locked on to the Phoenix Suns right here each and every day. Today's episode of Locked On Suns is brought to you by... Wow, my internet is completely screwing me. I will tell everybody where this show is brought to them from after Ben Garcia, my fellow Suns credentialed media member, tells me how he's feeling on this Tuesday. Do we even talk about game days anymore? Does that even matter?
Yeah, I was just thinking. I was like, who does this team even play today? Who do they have? I mean, it feels like it at this point doesn't matter. The Bucks, that's right. They're going up against the Bucks again, who are looking for some sort of revenge. But at this point, no Kevin Durant. I mean, oh man, I don't even know what we're looking for at this point. So maybe some Devin Booker up and ups to end the season, but we'll see.
Yeah,
we'll see.
We will get to that. Today's episode of the podcast is brought to you by Gametime, the best place to buy any ticket. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. More from them later on in the proceedings, but let's get right to it. Kevin Durant update via Shams Charania, Ben. Basically what we expected. He is, of course, not playing on Tuesday in that game you were just discussing in Milwaukee. We figured that was obvious, and he will be out at least a week through this 3-game road trip that the Suns have coming up here, where they play the Celtics and then the Knicks to round it out. Nothing about this surprises me, but if they're already ruling him out a week, and there will be 4 games left after that in the final week of the season, it just feels like a long shot that this guy will come back here. How are you feeling after kind of sleeping on it and seeing that news come up this morning?
Ask me how I feel again in a couple of days, but I still think he's going to come back. I think Kevin Durant does not. I do think I know Kevin Durant cares about what other people think or say about him, and he uses that to his motivation and to win awards. And I think these awards really do mean something to him. I think it's a travesty. He's only had one MVP in his life. I think he's at least should have had another at some point. But I think these all NBAs do matter, especially when it goes to his longevity. And I think you made a really good point last night. Like, you never know when it's going to be your last. We don't think Kevin Durant's going to take a steep fall off next year, but it's not impossible. I mean, Paul George is a shell of himself. Bradley Beal at times, I don't think he's washed, but does look at times like a shell of himself, or at least what we saw with the Wizards. So I do think he'll be back, but I think it's just solely going to be to get back on All NBA again this year. Were you surprised that they immediately just ruled him out a week though?
No, I mean,
I was a little surprised
with the ankle when he first got here, and I got that wrong last night. I said it was one on each. It was definitely the left both times, but he missed 3 weeks that time. And I know at that point they were being a little bit more careful because he had just had the knee sprain and everything else. But I just think an older guy with, long legs and lower body injury, 7 feet tall. I mean, I just think that's kind of par for the course. When it's Ryan Dunn, he can play 3 days later, but 36-year-old KD, it's a different story. So it didn't surprise me, but they obviously need him. Yeah, 11 times All-NBA to back up your point, but, each one of those matters when you're talking about the Hall of Fame and you're talking about any sort of, all-time placement, which, his mileage on that varies. I think he doesn't always love that stuff in terms of the legacy talk, but I think it matters to anybody who laces him up.
I don't think I just think it's another obviously like feather in the cap for Kevin Durant.
Yeah.
I don't think any less, and honestly, I probably don't even think much more of him because my standard for him is so high, and what I think Kevin Durant is, I don't think I would change anything. But I do think for Kevin Durant, like if we're just talking him, I just do think he cares more about that. I was surprised though, man, that they just immediately ruled him out a week. That like not the Kevin Durant side of it. That right there made me think, oh, maybe they're just going to shut this guy down. Not because they're out of it or whatever, but just because, like, what's the point anymore? Like, I think that's just what it is at this point.
If he's healthy, he'll play. I don't think it's up to them.
Really?
What would they benefit from shutting him down?
Well, what
would be the point of that?
They're going to trade him in the offseason, allegedly. So we don't want him to snap an Achilles or to tear an ACL.
Yeah,
like,
I think if he's healthy, that doesn't fly. You don't get your All-NBA because we want you to be healthy when we trade you. I mean, that'd be pretty insulting.
No, for sure. I think if Kevin Durant wants to play, sure. But I don't think that the Suns have no say in it. Like, I do think they do approach Durant like, hey, man, we know you're going to get traded. We really don't want you to have a catastrophic injury. Like, I think that does happen. But, I mean, I would largely agree with you. If I'm just being fair, that he would probably still play.
Here's my question, and I don't, I promise to all the people who are already furiously typing as I even begin this question that it's not about anything other than just to ask the question. I don't know the answer. I just think it's interesting to think about. He probably knows that there's a very strong chance that could have been the end. How much do you think it matters to him to not go out on those terms? Forget all NBA, just in general, to be able to just say, I finished my time here on my terms with my head high, not because Jabari Smith's foot got in my way.
I think it matters a ton because I think Kevin Durant, for better or for worse, cares a lot about what people think about him. I mean, he cares. I mean, like, I'd be lying to Suns fans if I didn't say he didn't care what you and I said or and the reason why I say that is because, he's responded to either one of us on whatever opposite days. And he's also responding to Joe Schmo without a profile picture on Twitter. Like, he cares about what other people think of him, especially the fans in close proximity to him. So I do believe he would, it's a good question that you phrased, would want to come back just to say his goodbye. He's going to get, regardless of what happens in the very last game of the season, whether he plays or not, a standing ovation, because largely people do appreciate who Kevin Durant is. We don't like that it ended poorly, and it largely ended catastrophically in terms of everything, the totality of it all. 6 playoff wins in 3 seasons isn't great. So I think that's a good question. I do think that does wane a lot on him. What would you side on?
I would want to. If it were me, I would, even if it was just the very last game of the season and maybe they're already out of the 10 seed by then, but he just plays 22 minutes and gets out there. I mean, it'd be nice to just be able to, like you said, have a last moment with the home crowd, although I guess the very last game of the season is on the road. So if he wants to do it at home, it'd have to be the Friday against the Spurs next week. But, I think it would matter to me, and I think it very well could matter to him. I don't think it's 100% chance that he's gone this offseason, but it's over 50 easily. So I think that has to be weighing. One last thing I want to ask you, though, is in the meantime, what are you wanting to see? I mean, I was kind of somewhat sarcastically saying, it'd be good to see Jalen Bridges, who's a guy that I think we all forgot about. But he was a player on the radar in the top half of the second round last year and ended up going undrafted. The Suns got him on a 2-way. He's been playing very solidly in the G League. Now, maybe they want to have him in the Suns G League team made the playoffs. So maybe since he's been there all year, they don't want to pull him away. But obviously there's more Ryan Dunn. What else? What are you interested in, even though it's obviously going to suck and the Suns are going to lose probably all these games?
The Jalen Bridges stuff is super interesting because you were nerding out over it in the media section watching the game, and I was like, you want to watch Jalen Bridges? And you was like, hell yeah, I want to watch Jalen Bridges. So I thought that was great. But
I liked him in the draft, and I was excited the Suns ended up with him as an undrafted guy. So I'm curious, but obviously who knows? I mean,
I think also as well, I might need to have a mulligan on the Bowl take again. I might have been too high on him. I might have been right where I was, but I fell in love like we all do, and sometimes I have to evaluate. But what I do want to see is more Bull, because why the hell not? Like I don't really care to see Ty Washington. We already have enough small guards. I have really no interest. I don't think Monte Morris is here next year, although it might be kind of interesting to watch him if he is, although I don't think that's going to be the case. If I had to pick someone, it'd be Bull. I would like to see if he can get back on that track of like not just showing that he put 4 or 5 good games together and then he fell off the face of the planet. If he could do that again while Kevin Durant's gone, you're like, okay, you really do have something here as the 9th, 10th guy, 8, 9, 10th guy, somewhere right there on your team. But I would like to see more of him. Is it Jalen Bridges for you?
Yeah,
do you
probably.
Think we will see him?
Probably not. Positionally, I think it's going to be one of those two if you're just asking who's going to get more minutes, because KD's a forward. So, Monte Morris or whatever, or Ty, like maybe you jigger things around and he gets in. But most likely it's going to be a forward. So it's probably Bull. And he's playing for a potentially big raise. Can he get the Josh Okogie treatment from last offseason and be the guy, maybe not $8 million, but could he get $4, $5, $6 million and be a trade chip and just kind of benefit from hanging around long enough that he qualifies for that and the Suns take advantage? I mean, that's kind of where he's at. I mean, if not, he's probably going to be wondering, am I going overseas or whatever? Like, that's kind of where Bull's at in his career if he can't string together some things heading into the offseason. So that's definitely a good one. All right, let's get to Devin Booker. Long overdue. Had a miserable game against Minnesota last week. Wasn't great against against Boston the game before that, and is just not been his usual self. We're almost done with this season, so we'll look at what happened here and maybe can he finish on a strong note next. First, today's show is brought to you by Monarch Money. Do you ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Well, we all do. Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. I mean, heck, you scroll an app and it tells you to buy 45 different things in the course of a minute. And that's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. That's the best thing about Monarch Money. It's all in one. Of course, you've heard of other apps or websites or services that do some of this stuff. Maybe you have a pen and a pad of paper somewhere in your house, or a sticky note, or some list on the far recesses of your mind, but this is Monarch Money, all of that in one place all together. You can take control of your whole financial situation with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. Today's show also brought to you by Prize Picks. Baseball season's in full swing. My Padres are on a hot streak. I don't know how D-backs fans are doing. I couldn't be me. There's no better way to get in on the action, though, than with Prize Picks. The best place for daily fantasy sports. With Prize Picks, you pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, and if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash, whether that's strikeouts, RBIs, or first inning runs. Prize Picks keeps track of everything and keeps every game exciting. Here's the deal. Some of this stuff with Prize Picks is just easy. I mean, can Aaron Judge hit more than 1 home run? Can Shohei Ohtani steal more than 1 base or hit more than 1 home run of his own? I mean, all you got to do is get it right in the direction of more or less. You can set your lineup in less than 60 seconds. It's just 2 to 5 players of any sport, any stat type that you want to use, more or less. Make your play and watch that money come in. Download the app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNBA for $50 instantly after that first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. Alrighty, let's keep it rolling here. Don't forget to sign up for the Locked On Suns daily newsletter if you have not already at LockedOnDaily.com. The off-season news is going to be coming fast and heavy. You want all of it, from the national NBA stuff all the way down to the local stuff with the Suns. That's the best way to get all of it. Stay up to date with the newsletter and get exclusive writing from our great duo of Katie Heindel and Mike Shearer. All right, Devin Booker here. I think this can just be the starting point. I think that since Devin Booker broke through into the prime of his career and the Suns team turned things around in the 2018-19 season, or 2019-20 season, but whichever one, this is the worst season that Devin Booker has had since that point.
Yep.
What do you think?
No, I don't think there's any debate. What would, because you would argue in 2023, I believe it was, when in the playoffs against the Nuggets, obviously nuclear Michael Jordan 96 levels mode was just absolutely insane. He carried that team when Kevin Durant was injured for that 3-week stretch. I remember the game that Kevin Durant was supposed to come back. He dropped like 50 in that game or something ridiculous. Not only is it Kevin Durant, or not only is it Devin Booker's worst year, I think you can argue, as a pro, because before there were no expectations on that. But sure, if you want to say it's his worst one since the Suns have really turned things around, I would agree with that as well. Defensively, I think is what has taken like the biggest step back. Yeah, the shooting percentage is down. The 3-point percentage is down. The 3-point percentage is like significantly down. Like he's just a bad 3-point shooter. So he's shooting 33%. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's Bud's system. I don't know if it's Vogel. I don't know if it's the fact that he's surrounded around other bad defensive players, but he has been exposed at times in games, man. He can't stay in front of guys. He gets bullied down low. He's committing really stupid fouls. There has been an art to Devin Booker's game that I think has been lost and has just been sped up. It feels like everything he does, he's just doing it on a timer and doing it quicker than that timer's going off. So for me, that's the thing that I think is just really bad. And leaving Kevin Durant out to dry, where this team is the nucleus is of those two. And oftentimes he's not helping him out. I joked yesterday and he needs to be Robin, but he's not even, being the fourth guy on a team sometimes. So it's been really disappointing, man. And it has really made me think about where my motives, and I mentioned this last night, are for just keeping Devin Booker. Am I keeping him because he's just ours? And I love Devin Booker, and he started this new revolution of the Phoenix Suns? Or am I keeping him because it's the best basketball decision for this team? And I would encourage everyone to think about that like I have. And I'm not saying I'm there, but I didn't think I'd even be thinking about it.
So I think splitting offense defense is obviously a good way to go. And when I look at that, the way that he's being used in terms of like how his shots are coming, you can go on NBA.com and look at, ISOs versus pick and roll versus dribble handoff versus transition. It's all in there. And for the most part, it's not super different. There's a less dribble handoffs because Nurkic, that was his bread and butter. That's kind of gone. So, whatever. But you trade some of those for pick and rolls. It's not ultimately that different in terms of you're getting downhill off of a screen. His ISOs per game are way down, which I think is a good thing. So I'm not really going to list that off as some kind of culprit for why he's struggling, because I think he wasn't very good in isolation last season, and most guys aren't at their best just in a static, 3-point stance, whatever. Yeah, trying to just, Kobe your way into a bucket. That's not super efficient. His drives per game, pretty similar. And so you look at it, in the number one thing that's worse is that he's taking a lot more threes and making a lot less of them. His playmaking is even about in line with what it was last year, which was one of the better playmaking seasons he had ever had, and all that sort of stuff. I really think that a lot of his offensive struggles, just compared to like last season or the year before that or whatever one you want to do, really just comes down to his 3-point shooting. I think that is almost the whole story, just if you're saying, why did this year look so much worse on offense? Now, defensively, I think that ship has sailed, and I think the only hope that you really have for him to not stick out like a sore thumb on that end of the court is just when he's back being surrounded by high-level defense again across the roster, which he's not right now. But when he had, Jay Crowder at his peak, Mikal Bridges competing for Defensive Player of the Year, DeAndre Ayton, hustling for another contract, and Chris just being a genius basketball player, well, it's pretty easy to fit into that and just execute and whatever. Even last year at the Olympics, he did that. Like we have evidence that he can be passable, but I don't think he's ever going to be a good defender. I just don't think that that's really in the cards. I mean, he's 28. It's not just going to magically pop up here. As for the offense and some of the point that you were making, I went back and listened to my episode with Kellen Olson from it wasn't the game recap after Game 7 against Dallas, but it was the very next episode I did. I got Kellen on, and I went back to the conversation we had about Book, and I honestly think that it was 3 years ago, but I think that I'm basically there all over again. 2023 convinced me that maybe this wasn't true, but I think that Devin Booker is not somebody that is going to be a number one bona fide on a championship team. And the Suns need to confront that about how they build this roster, how they feel about Booker long term, and what type of team and what type of structure he needs. But that Minnesota game the other night we've seen that movie too many times to ignore it at this point. When that type of defensive attention is there, he is not a guy that has the type of shot diet and approach as an offensive player and as a scorer to beat it. He does not. And if you have a way that a team can guard you that beats you, you can't be the number one player on a team that wants to win a championship. There's no defense to shut Luka down. There's no defense to shut Jokic down. No defense to shut peak LeBron down. There is one for Booker. And I just think that has to put a cap on what you can be as a superstar player. So I'm with you. I think that it at least poses a lot more questions than just, well, put a bunch of young guys around him and see what you got. Like, you got to have a better plan than that to maximize what he is. And we know a lot more about how to maximize it after this KD experiment.
So a few things you said. One of the things right away about the 3-point shooting is one of the reasons, like schematically, why we'll listen to people saying you need to fire Mike Budenholzer is he just might not be the coach to maximize Devin Booker's abilities, because a lot of Bud wants to do is chuck the ball from 3-point land. And so I think that's really interesting on where that goes and how you find a better happy medium of this, because Devin Booker, I don't know what it is. One of the better mid-range guys, but hey, so was Sean Livingston, and the 3-point shot wasn't there. So, but the other thing that was interesting, I'll take another quiet victory lap is, I brought Espo on. You talked about bringing out Kellen on. I had Espo on earlier in the year, and we debated why I thought Devin Booker wasn't the best shooting guard in the NBA. And the physical traits of Anthony Edwards, I was taking over that. And I was on the Devin Booker train before the Timberwolves series last year, but I saw it. And I think if there's anyone out there who still thinks Devin Booker's a 1, I'm not so sure what you're watching. He can be, in my opinion, the best 2 in the NBA. The problem is you need a specific type of 1, like a Kevin Durant, which you have right now, but the rest of the team's got issues everywhere.
I mean,
what do you mean?
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
I think that you need the player that you would put next to Booker to be, in this era of what the best teams are doing, more physically dominating than what Kevin Durant is. I don't think that a team built awesome around Booker and KD was probably going to beat this Thunder team or this Boston team. I don't think that construction was going to be able to compete with the very top rosters with the level of versatility and force and size that is winning in the NBA right now. I don't think that those two guys, I think that the league passed that type of duo by a little bit.
I think it's crazy for anyone to roll their eyes at you when you say that, because all we see is keep 36 together, which, by the way, I think it is so weird to refer to players as their numbers.
Very odd.
It's so weird when people say 36.
I think it started with Steph.
Or, yeah, it's
Warriors
weird.
Fans did do the 30 thing with him. It's
odd.
I
Okay.
agree with
well, it's really weird, and it's got like a Stan vibe to it, but I can buy that. The problem is, and this will be the last thing I say, because I know we're going over here a little bit, but how many guys out there then that are you describing that would fit with Devin Booker? What is there, like 3? Like LeBron, Ant, Luka, but he doesn't play any defense. Like, if that's the case, if the list is this big of the amount of guys that would fit with Devin Booker to win a championship.
Yeah, but I guess the thing is, like, I wouldn't say that I think he can be like a 1B. I still do. I still think that if you, like, because Chris Paul at age 36 or whatever he was in 2021 wasn't anybody's idea of that's the guy you would need to pair Devin Booker with to go to the finals. But the way that Chris played the game balanced Book well enough. So I don't think it necessarily has to be somebody who's like infinitely better than Kevin Durant. I think it just has to be somebody whose style and age, most importantly. I mean, if Book played with 25-year-old KD, they'd be freaking awesome, but he's not. So that's some of what I'm talking about. But yeah, last thing I'll say, because you mentioned Bud and his style. Another thing I listened to back then in 2022 that I still believe, Book's best, I just think the most sustainable version of him at his peak actually does involve an incredibly high dose of three-point shots. Because the other, if you're not going to be a downhill killing machine, the way that like Kyrie Irving or Anthony Edwards, when they face a double team, or Damian Lillard, what do those guys do? They split it and they beeline for the basket and they finish over dudes, or John Moran or whatever, Derrick Rose, Dwayne Wade. When those guys saw a double team, they just burst through it. Book's not going to do that. So what's the other way to do it? Well, you make it so teams can't guard you that way by pulling up in their face from three. That's the other way to beat that type of defense. And so I think, it's always been the case. When Book is at his best, he's taking pull-up threes. It was against the Lakers in the 2021. It was against, the Nuggets in 2023. It was the Clippers in 2021. Whatever example you want to put out there, Pelicans in 2022 playoffs. So there is a balance there. I don't think it's just threes versus not threes. It's how do those shots come and what's around him. But obviously, much more time to discuss that. Let's get to the first coaching candidate on the market and whether that person, formerly of the Memphis Grizzlies, might make sense for the Suns. Next. First, today's show is brought to you by the Gametime app. There's nothing like watching basketball live. The college hoops world will be in Tampa and in San Antonio, two of the tiniest Final Four cities I can remember in a while. But maybe that makes it a little more affordable to get over there. And Gametime makes getting tickets easier than ever once you're there. Or maybe you want to see one of these final Suns home games or the Mercury this upcoming summer. Well, Gametime's new feature, Gametime Picks, will help you see the best value deals right up top. Whether you go to the city you're in or the team or sport you want to watch, it shows you the best value right at the top of the app. So you're getting the best deal before you ever buy. You also can see views from your seat, all fees, all in front, and much more, all at Gametime. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime Picks. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. All right, Ben, as you mentioned, we did run a little over with the Book and KD topics, but those are more important. This one is a little bit of conjecture. Taylor Jenkins was fired from the Memphis Grizzlies, surprisingly, with just 8 games left in the season over the weekend, and I think Suns fans pretty immediately jumped into a frenzy, getting excited about the track record of player development and defensive floor raising and all those sorts of things that Jenkins was able to do while he became the most winning coach in Grizzlies history. And I'm curious what you think of Jenkins. Is that the type of coach that you think makes sense for this team? Because we don't even know what's going to happen, what other teams are going to be hiring, who the candidate. We don't know anything right now if Mike Budenholzer gets fired, but we now know he's available. So is he the type of guy you would like to see the Suns pursue if they do make a change?
From a personality standpoint, yes. But if we're just talking about coaches that were just on a team that just got fired or could potentially become available, I really like those fiery guys. So Nick Nurse is someone who I don't think will get let go. But like, if I'm just leaning towards that type of personality, I really like a bleep you mentality head coach. I know that sometimes wears a little like
I'll say
thin.
I like, if we're going that route, I'll say I would put Jenkins over Nurse. I'm not touching Nick Nurse with the 10-foot pole after the Philly situation and how badly that's
Well,
gone.
I mean, I don't know, man. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, Joel Embiid won an MVP with Nick Nurse, right?
I don't think so. I think
Was that?
Joel
Am I off by a
won it
year?
2
Am I
years
off by a
ago.
year?
But
Am I off by a
I
year?
think
Okay.
it's not even about that I'm blaming Nick Nurse. It's just like, how do you fire another coach and then go, we're taking the guy from the only situation worse than ours.
Right.
Come on down. That'd be tough.
It's a very good comeback. So I would agree with that. But what I was gonna say was, upon further review, because I texted you and I said, Jenkins, that's kind of intriguing. And you had said, he's a little too close to Bud's play style. And I was like, yeah, okay. So I went out and did my own research. The same issues people have with Jenkins is not his fiery mentality, screaming at people, the bleep you mentality. It's not that. It's the X's and O's. It's a lot of like what you had said. Every person that I'd seen do like an instant reaction or read a couple articles is all about like, he doesn't really have a direction for his team. It's a lot of like, there's talent. We're going to adjust on the fly. But it's a lot of, like you had told me through text, it's a bit random, to where people were even citing the Dillon Brooks situation as, I'm not so sure how much of a get in your face one-on-one with people as he should have been with Dillon Brooks in that situation, how that exploded, how he was fighting with LeBron and then he wasn't talking to media after and he was chucking up shots. And I had seen someone be like, yeah, like that's a coach problem. So if the Suns fired Bud and they hired Jenkins, like, let's just play it out. I think after reading and seeing what I've seen, I think I'd be as happy as when they signed Bud last year, which I was pretty ecstatic for because it was he was a part of the new generation of the NBA's offense. But I think I'm going to just lean on you. Well, lean on what the thing that you have said as well is like, I think I just want a hopeful, hotshot young head coach to come in and assistant that's never been a head coach before to try to figure it out. But I think I'll pass on Jenkins. I think I'm over that.
I'm pretty much in the same boat as you, and I think the reality is like Jenkins is at this weird point in his career where, he is probably ready to coach he wants to coach a winning team. He just got fired by the Grizzlies. They've been in the playoffs every single season outside of last year when Ja has had his problems. And, but like the only thing he's proven to be as a head coach is a developer of young talent. So it's almost like these young teams would be looking at him, but he probably doesn't necessarily, that's not his first choice to go there. And so he's a little bit in this no man's land. We also don't know which of those categories the Suns are going to fall in next year. We don't know that yet. We will probably by the time we're talking about which coach they're going to hire, we'll have a lot more clarity about the Kevin Durant situation and all that stuff. But that just makes me feel like where I think the Suns should go for a coach is one of two categories. Either whether they keep Durant or not, and obviously that's not very likely, but either you get a guy that your stars want, or that book wants if he's the only star left, and you just sort of buy into the relationship dynamic and hope that, somebody who sees eye to eye with your best player, that just kind of can be a rising tide that lifts all boats. Or you just, like you said, the hot shot, get the next Joe Mazzulla, the next Mark Daigneault, right? But really, regardless of which route they go, as far as who the exact coach ends up being, I want that decision made by a new executive with a vision to fulfill that, with a real top to bottom vision for what this is going to be. Like that's just, I know that's kind of a cop out to say, but I don't want James Jones and Matt Ishbia to find the next hotshot assistant. I don't want Matt Ishbia and James Jones to try to find the guy that they think KD or that Book or KD might like. I want somebody who's going to sell Booker on it. I want somebody who's going to find the right fit for the young talent that gets brought in this summer. And that's what works the best, not just this kind of, square peg, round hole, whack-a-mole, let's just try to fix this one thing and hope it all works out type of thing. And so that's the long answer, I guess. But I don't think I know the name of the guy that might be the best coach, might be the best.
I mean, I think both of us don't know because we didn't think we'd be in this situation again. Do you think A, he gets fired? B, would you fire him?
Mm-hmm.
And C, what direction do you think the Suns would go? In terms of young hotshot head coach or the Chauncey Billups, for lack of a lazy definition,
kind of the player coach guy. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
I think that after that Houston game, I'm really leaning toward that he will get fired. Especially considering now that they won't probably make the play in, then the results, it's a little easier to make that sell. And then should he be, I think I still feel the way that I did before when we've talked about it, a couple weeks before they had their little win streak, where I said, if it wasn't about money, I would say yes without blinking. So I just got to say yes because it's not my money, and I just don't really, why am I going to say that they shouldn't because of that? So I'll say they should. And then where do they go? I think that they try to get the most exciting version of the assistant hotshot guy that gets named this cycle. I think that it's not going to be sexy because fans won't know that guy's name, but I think if you can find the one of those and then Ishbia can feel like I'm still beating out all the other teams because he was the hottest one this cycle and I'll get him, I could see it going that way. So that's my answer. What do you think?
Fired. I do think he gets fired. I guess I think I would fire him after last night. Give me a couple more days to digest it, but I think he gets fired. I think they go the Chauncey Billups route. Player coach, all the things that Gambo was laying out a couple weeks ago. Been a head coach before, former player. I think one of the things was like a black head coach, I think is something that maybe relate to the players like Booker and stuff a little bit better.
And he had mentioned that they just hired 2 white dudes in a row. So
that's a good point too.
The
Yeah,
league tends
too.
to kind of value the diversity stuff just because it's
basketball and
it's
basketball and 95% of the players are black. So I think that I think I'm cheating as well because when I see that information, I just think Gambo obviously knows. But I think that's where they would go. But yes, I think he gets fired, and yes, I would fire him.
So thumbs down to Taylor Jenkins, shrug about Devin Booker, and let's hope we see KD one last time in a Suns uniform. That'll wrap us up. Hit follow or subscribe if you have not already. We got more content coming your way this week. Become an everydayer. We'll try to do a big Jalen Bridges bonanza on Tuesday night or something. Maybe Bowl Palooza. I don't know. We'll workshop a name. We'll be here for you either way, though, guys. Enjoy the game. We'll talk to you then.